The billionaire Sheikh's eyes burned with a fire that no vast desert sun could rival. His voice was a low rumble of controlled fury, echoing against the marble pillars of the grand hall. Tonight was not merely a gathering. It was his arena for retribution, and the prize was a shattered spirit draped in servitude. The palace was a jewel nestled in the golden heart of the emirate, where opulence whispered from every corner. Flickering lanterns cast dancing shadows on silk-draped walls, embroidered with threads of pure gold. The scent of rare oud incense lingered, weaving through the heavy tapestries, blending with the cool breath of the desert night beyond wide-arched windows. Crystal chandeliers hung like stars, shimmering above a sea of dignitaries cloaked in jewels and pride. Amongst this clamorous elegance he stood, Majid al-Zahari, a man carved from pride and power. His tailored robe, woven with threads of midnight and gold, moved like liquid command around him. But beneath that armor of authority, nerves betrayed him. A flicker of doubt, swiftly smothered by the walls he'd built, brick by brick. In the shadowed alcove, Layla, the maid, once invisible, now cloaked in silence and mystery. Her past was stitched with servitude and quiet obedience, but tonight her transformation was a secret weapon. The simple cotton smocks were replaced by a deep emerald gown that hugged her slender form like a second skin, crowned by a delicate tiara that caught the light in a subtle, commanding glow. Her footsteps were soft but sure as she approached, every inch the queen she had become. Majid's gaze, sharp as falcons circling high above the desert sands, cut through the crowd toward her. His intent was raw. This was his calculated moment to expose her humble origins, to unmask the servant behind the silken veil, and remind everyone, especially her, of the social chasm that lay between them. "Layla," he called out, voice dripping with cold certainty. "Come forward. Tonight, the desert reveals its truths, and so shall you." A hush fell. The courtiers' whispers echoed like desert winds, a mix of curiosity and concealed amusement. But instead of crumbling under the weight of expectation, Layla's shoulders straightened, her eyes gleaming with untold storms. "I stand not as the servant you once knew, Sheikh," she said, voice steady, her words weaving through the silence like a spell, but as a woman who commands her own destiny. The room stiffened, gasps fluttered like birds startled from dusk. Majid's pride, as vast as the dunes beyond, faltered for a fraction of a heartbeat. The sharp crease of his brow softened, replaced by something unsettling. Intrigue? Fear? She stepped forward, each movement a dance of grace and defiance. Her secret had been an alchemy of patience and grit, lessons in distant lands, whispered guidance from unseen allies, and the quiet sharpening of a will forged in fire. "You think you can break me?" she challenged. "By dragging me into the spotlight you always denied me. But tonight, the shadows belong to me." The Sheikh's lips curled into a half-smile, bitter, reluctant. "You are a riddle, Layla, one I did not expect to face." Before the world could digest this bewildering reversal, Layla reached into the folds of her gown and revealed a delicate parchment, its seal embossed with the emblem of the royal family, a document that could upend legacies and rend alliances. The hall erupted into stunned silence, the weight of the revelation sinking in, like a desert storm's first thunderclap. Majid's steady facade cracked, his eyes darkened with the tempest of a man confronted by truths he never anticipated. The dance of scorn had turned into a battle of secrets, and the game was only just beginning. Before the next secret of this grand emirate unfolds, make sure you've joined our caravan of stories. Many destinies are yet to be carved, and I don't want you to miss a single moment. Like if your heart is already intrigued by this billionaire sheikh, tell me in the comments from which city you're following this saga and what twist you expect next. Your passion for these dramas inspires us to keep telling them. Thank you for being with us. The murmurs in the grand hall had barely settled when Majid al-Zahari's fingertips tightened around the armrest of his gilded throne. His stormy gaze never wavered from the delicate parchment resting in Layla's slender hands. The emblem shimmered like a brand of undeniable truth, a royal seal that held the power to topple kingdoms and shatter legacies. A biting chill crept through Majid's veins, as if the desert night itself conspired against him. The document was more than a threat. It was a declaration, and Layla was no longer a mere shadow in the palace corridors. She was the catalyst of an upheaval that could swallow them all. Explain yourself. Majid's voice cut through the uneasy silence, low and trembling with restraint. Fury. Layla's emerald eyes flashed with unwavering resolve. This parchment proves that my origins are more intertwined with this emirate than anyone here realizes. I am not just a servant chosen by fate. I am a daughter hidden by secrets, a rightful claimant denied her place. The courtiers stifled gasps, their faces masks of disbelief and shock. Whispers erupted like scattered embers, each flame fueled by curiosity and thinly veiled fear of what the future might bring. Majid's mind raced. How had she uncovered this? Who had aided her in weaving this tapestry of deception and revelation? And more devastatingly, what did this mean for the power he wielded? Layla stepped closer, the soft rustle of her silk gown sounding like a thunderclap in his ears. You keep your secrets, but tonight I lay mine bare. Majid's breath hitched. The pride that had once girded him like impenetrable armor now felt fragile, as if the sands beneath his feet might swallow him whole. Why? His words emerged raw and vulnerable, betraying the tempest within. Why reveal all this now? Her gaze softened, but only for a heartbeat. Because the lies have cost me years of silence, of hiding in plain sight. And because I refuse to be your pawn any longer. A heavy pause swallowed the room. Majid's eyes darkened, but the fire simmered, no longer scorching but questioning. Layla reached out, her voice dropping to a fragile whisper that trembled with years of longing and defiance. I never sought your favor, Majid al-Zahari, but what I desire now is a choice. A chance to claim who I really am. The Sheikh's chest tightened. For the first time in years he felt exposed, stripped of his invincibility. From somewhere deep within, a memory flickered, an echo of a time when innocence and hope had not yet been eroded by betrayal and power. Guard her. His command sliced through the murmurs, abrupt and final. Guards moved swiftly to flank Layla, their faces unreadable shields. Her eyes locked onto his for a moment longer, a silent promise of battles yet to come. Then she was swept away, the emerald glow fading beneath the towering arches. Majid sank back against the throne, the weight of that fragile yet unyielding woman pressing down upon him like the desert sun on stone. Behind the heavy velvet drapes, shadows shifted, conspirators whispering in the wings, their ambitions ignited by the unfolding storm. In the corridors where opulence met treachery, alliances would be forged and broken. Tonight, Majid was no longer the unquestioned master of his realm. The game had changed, and every move would reverberate with the pounding pulse of secrets long buried. His gaze settled on a small, ornate box resting on the marble floor near his feet. A gift from an old ally, unopened for weeks. Slowly, he bent and lifted the delicate lid. Inside, nestled against silk, lay a ring of rare desert diamonds, twisted intricately with symbols of loyalty. The path ahead was a labyrinth woven with trust and betrayal, passion and power. And somewhere, buried deep within the shifting sands of allegiance, lay a truth that could either destroy them both or forge an unbreakable bond. The hall was silent once more. Yet the desert winds outside carried a whisper, one that promised the dawn would bring a reckoning none could escape. Majid's lips pressed into a thin line. The throne demanded strength, but tonight, strength meant facing the storm within. He rose slowly, the diamonds catching the moonlight, like a heart beating in rhythm with the fate unfolding before him. As the palace doors closed, with a sonorous thud behind the departing guests, Majid stared into the depths of the night, where shadows contorted into familiar shapes. And in that darkness, he heard the first words of a secret that would shake the very foundation of his empire. One whispered in a voice that sounded achingly like Layla's. She was not merely a challenger. She was the key to a past he had buried, and a future he could no longer control. The grand hall, once alive with murmurs that stirred like restless desert winds, fell into a heavy, suffocating silence. Majid al-Zahari remained seated on his gilded throne, fingers curled tightly around the armrest, the royal seal's emblem burning into his gaze as though marking the last thread of control he believed he held. Each breath was a silent storm inside him, rage, confusion, and a seed of fear entwining in a dangerous dance. He had risen unchallenged in this realm. Delicate parchment in Layla's hands threatened to unravel every fortress he built. "We will not let an insolent servant rewrite history," one of the elder courtiers hissed, voice thick with disdain, breaking the fragile quiet. Majid's gaze shot toward the murmur, sharp as a desert viper ready to strike. Silence. His command, soaked with steel, sent shivers through the assembly. The court might see riches and power, but beneath, a tempest roiled. Wild and unbound, Layla's eyes never faltered. The emerald glow of her gown caught the light with every subtle shift of her slender figure as she stepped forward again. Her voice, calm and unwavering, was a beacon amidst the storm. "This is not a challenge without cause," she declared, lifting the parchment for all to see. The blood that runs through my veins is not that of a servant, but of a lineage buried beneath lies and betrayal. I am the daughter of Emir Faisal al-Zahari's hidden heir, the one they whispered vanished in the sands. Gasps like sharp arrows pierce the air, the court's decorum fractured, replaced by a wave of disbelief and frantic whispers. Majid's jaw clenched, memories flickering like distant echoes, fragments of secrets his father never dared reveal, shadows he buried beneath layers of gold and pride. The air grew thick with tension, the sweet scent of oud mixing bitterly with the metallic taste of unease. Lamps flickered, as if the desert night itself leaned in to listen. "Explain your evidence," Majid demanded, voice low, but cracking with the weight of trapped emotions. Layla's hand trembled for a fraction, but steadied as she unfolded a second parchment. This one, covered in faded ink and seals long thought lost. Documents hidden for decades, locked away to protect a throne feared vulnerable. I was raised in silence, trained in exile, waiting for the moment my truth could awaken. He rose, the folds of his midnight and gold robe flowing like a dark tide. His long shadow stretched over the marble floor, falling over the assembled dignitaries like a formidable storm. His face, carved with years of dominance, was now a mask of haunted vulnerability. Why now? The question dropped heavy between them. Layla swallowed her fear, eyes shimmering like two emerald flames burning beneath a desert sky. Because a crown built on lies is unstable. Because I refuse to live as a ghost in the palace I belong to. Because I want the chance to rule. Not as your pawn, but as a queen who chooses her path. A breath crackled through the hall, the weight of her resolve forcing even the most loyal courtiers to reconsider. In that moment, Majid glimpsed the woman beneath the servant's guise, fierce, resolute, unbreakable. His mind fractured between fury and reluctant respect. Every instinct screamed to crush this threat. Yet a deeper part, buried beneath years of hardened pride, longed to understand. "Is this ambition or rebellion?" he whispered, voice barely audible, yet deadly serious. Layla stepped within the throne's shadow, close enough that the scent of jasmine and sandalwood wrapped around him, a reminder of moments when their worlds briefly touched outside the battlefield of power. "Perhaps both," she answered softly, "but I am no longer willing to live in your shadow." Majid's eyes narrowed, pain gnawing at his insides. Somewhere, buried beneath his cold exterior, the boy who once dreamed of honor and love fought to awaken. Yet, the kingdom demanded strength, unyielding and absolute. "Do you know what you risk?" His voice fractured, the edge of desperation breaking through. "To claim what was taken is to pit yourself against everyone who benefits from silence." A fleeting smile curved Layla's lips, fierce and unrepentant. "I walk that desert willingly, because freedom is worth every storm." Guards moved to surround her once more, but Majid lifted a hand, a silent command to hold. Their eyes locked again, the air vibrating with unspoken challenges and fragile possibilities. The world outside seemed to hold its breath, the desert winds carrying whispers of change, secrets beginning to unravel like the first threads of dawn. Majid turned away from the crowd, retreating behind the polished marble pillars, seeking solace in the quiet hum of the inner chambers. The ornate box, with the ring of desert diamonds, lay waiting, a symbol of power, loyalty, and binding contracts. He lifted the ring, fingers tracing the delicate inscriptions, and felt the weight of a promise forged not just in gold, but in fate itself. But the ring, as beautiful as it was, offered no answers, only more questions. Images flickered through his mind: a hidden sister, a forgotten betrayal, a destiny rewritten. The loneliness behind his regal mask deepened, mirrored in Layla's fearless defiance. Silence cloaked the palace once more. Then, from the shadows beyond the grand hall, a servant's hurried footsteps echoed, urgent and secretive. Majid's sharpened gaze caught a glint of a folded letter pressed between the servant's trembling hands. Breaking tradition, Majid reached out and took it, his eyes scanning the delicate script. His blood ran cold. The letter bore an unmistakable seal, one only known to those closest to the emir's deepest secrets. And within its lines lay a warning, whispered like the desert's dry curse: the daughter is not what she seems. Her true allegiance hides in the sands of treachery. Majid's breath stalled. Behind him, the moonlight cast a long shadow, and in that silence, a darker game began. One that would test the fragile lines between loyalty and betrayal, between love and destruction. The kingdom's very soul trembled on the edge of revelation, and at its center stood two figures destined to be both enemies and saviors. The billionaire Sheikh saw coming. The folded letter trembled slightly in Majid al-Zahari's hands. Its seal, a crescent moon intertwined with a dagger, casting a shadow across the marble floor. The room around him blurred, the voices of courtiers fading into a dull murmur as his gaze locked onto the script that would shatter every certainty he had clung to all these years. His breath hitched, a storm of disbelief and dread coiling in his chest. The words, delicate yet dagger-sharp, whispered accusations no ruler dared confront openly. The daughter, she was not what she seemed. A cold silence knitted the grand hall, heavier than desert nightfall, as Majid's mind raced through the labyrinth of possibilities spiraling before him. Was Layla truly a pawn in a grander game? Or something far more dangerous, a weapon cloaked in innocence? Majid's fists clenched around the letter, his knuckles bleaching white beneath the weight of betrayal. Then a sound, a faint shuffle from the shadowed corridor, pulled his attention. A slender figure emerged, eyes cautious, carrying a small case wrapped in velvet. The arrival was quiet, but charged. The figure's gaze flickered to Majid's, a silent plea tangled with unspoken fears. Majid nodded once, silent command, and the case was placed on a nearby gilded table. With deliberate fingers, Majid lifted the lid. Inside rested a pendant, an ancient talisman passed down through generations, rumored to hold the key to unmasking truth from lies. Its surface bore intricate calligraphy, faint but deeply powerful. Majid's heart thudded painfully. If the letter had sown doubt, this relic was a torch, illuminating the shadows he could, and recalling whispered legends of its power to reveal concealed bloodlines, offer undeniable proof beyond forged papers and whispered rumors. Layla's voice, unexpectedly calm and resolute, broke into his thoughts as she re-entered the hall, guarded but unbowed. "You seek the truth, Sheikh," she said, her emerald eyes shimmering with a fearless fire. "Then use whatever tools you must. But know this, my right to stand here is no illusion to be unmasked or dismissed." Majid's gaze hardened, the weight of his crown a crushing reminder that truth in this palace was seldom simple, always layered in secrets, sacrifices, and shadows. "Very well," he said, voice tight as a drawn bowstring. "We will uncover it. But understand this, if your claim is false, if you have deceived this court and me, the consequences will be unforgiving." A faint, almost imperceptible smile curved Layla's lips. "Let the desert judge us, Sheikh. Its winds carry no lies." The palace doors swung open wide, letting in a gust of warm desert air that rustled the golden drapes. Outside, the sprawling empire whispered promises and threats alike, under a moon veiled behind thin clouds. Majid motioned for the elders and advisors to gather in the private chamber, where shadows deepened and secrets hunted for refuge. Whispers of ancient laws, hidden lineages, and forgotten conspiracies soon filled the heavy air. The night stretched, every word and revelation peeling back layers of the emirate's polished facade. Majid listened, torn between the iron will that had built his reign and the fragile glimmers of doubt raising specters he thought long buried. Layla observed from the doorway, her silhouette framed by lantern light. Poised yet restless, her heart beat with a mix of hope and fear. Hope that the truth would be seen, and fear of the dawn's harsh judgment. Hours passed like fleeting desert sands, until at last a scroll was unfurled before Majid. Ancient records meticulously chronicled in ornate script. Finger trembling slightly, Majid traced the lines that revealed a truth so staggering it defied his disbelief. There, hidden beneath layers of deceit, lay undeniable proof. Layla was indeed connected to the bloodline once thought lost, a daughter concealed to protect her from enemies hungry for power. His chest tightened, an avalanche of emotions crashing over him. Pride, fury, betrayal, and a deep-rooted protectiveness he had fought for years to silence. "You were hidden," he murmured, voice thick with pain. "Not because you were a threat, but because you were." The fragile hope of a doomed legacy. Layla's eyes glistened, the hard, battle-scarred woman momentarily softening. "I was meant to be the forgotten shadow, but now I am the storm." Majid stepped closer, the weight of his choices pressing heavily between them. "You have claimed more than your place in the lineage," he said softly. "You have claimed my attention, and that is no small power." A fragile silence fell, charged with contradiction, an empire's reckoning balanced against the fragile bloom of something new and dangerous. But before any further words could bloom, a sudden loud crash echoed from the entrance. Guards flinched, hands moving toward hilts of hidden daggers. A messenger burst through the ornate doors, breath ragged, eyes wild with warning. In his shaking hand, another letter, sealed with the same ominous emblem, but darker, more foreboding. Majid took it, heart thundering anew. "The game has only just begun," the letter warned. "A covenant of shadows, binding not just the past and present, but the lives of the sheikh and the woman who dared to defy him." Majid's gaze flickered to Layla, her fierce countenance bathed in flickering torchlight. The truth had torn open old wounds, but the real battle, the one of destiny, love, and power, was far from over. Outside, the desert wind howled like an omen, the sound of empires trembling beneath the weight of secrets finally unleashed. And in that tremor, Majid felt a cold certainty rise. Whatever lay ahead would demand every fragment of strength, every ounce of trust, and the courage to confront a darkness far deeper than any desert night. The storm inside the billionaire Sheikh's soul was only beginning to rage. Majid stood motionless, the letter slipping slowly from his trembling hand. The weight of its message pressed down upon him like the relentless desert sun, merciless and unyielding. The crescent moon entwined with a dagger, the emblem of a secret society long whispered about but never confronted openly, marked the note as a harbinger of betrayal. His heart pounded, each beat a drum of warning. The grand hall, once brimming with grandeur and silent awe, now held its breath. Courtiers exchanged anxious glances, sensing the fragile balance tipping toward chaos. Majid's gaze darted to Layla, her silhouette framed by shadows and flickering torchlight, a fierce monument of defiance and inevitability. She stepped forward deliberately, her emerald gown rippling like waves along the sea of polished marble. Her eyes held steady, reflecting the storm that now raged between them, a tempest not just of secrets, but of destinies irreversibly entwined. "I never asked for this war, Sheikh." Her voice was a whisper laced with iron. "But if it is to be fought, then let truth be our battlefield." Majid's breath caught. For years, he had built walls around his heart, stone by stone, forged by pride and pain. Now, those walls threatened to crumble under the weight of a truth he feared yet could no longer ignore. His empire, his legacy, his very identity hung in the balance of her claim and the shadowed threats veiled within that letter. He turned abruptly from the crowd, stepping into the cool silence of the palace corridors, the distant call of a muezzin folding into the night air. His footsteps echoed like a judge's gavel in the vast emptiness. The ring of desert diamonds, the symbol of loyalty and binding promises, rested heavy in his palm, its cold surface a cruel reminder of vows made and debts owed. Behind a heavy door, an ancient scroll lay unfurled on a low table, illuminated by the soft glow of oil lamps shaped like delicate blossoms. The talisman rested beside it, its surface etched with calligraphy that shimmered beneath layers of dust and time. Majid reached out, tracing the worn lines, pondering the weight of tradition, of power, of blood. His mind raced back to the past, recalling whispered stories of hidden heirs and forgotten promises, of a family fractured by secrets and half-truths. Layla's words echoed in his memory like a chant from a lost prayer. A crown built on lies is unstable. A knock shattered his reverie. The door creaked open to reveal a trusted aide, his face masked in shadow, but eyes betraying urgency. He handed Majid a sealed envelope, heavier and more ominous than the last. The seal bore the same crescent and dagger, now darkened with a hint of blood-red wax. Majid's fingers trembled as he broke the seal, unfolding the letter with reverence and dread. The script inside was terse, unyielding. The daughter you seek is not of pure blood. Her allegiance lies with enemies cloaked beneath the sands. Trust not the storm, but the silence it leaves behind. A cold wind swept through the chamber, disturbing the curtains and carrying a faint hint of jasmine. Layla's scent lingering like a ghost. Majid's jaw clenched. Doubt, that insidious serpent, slithered into his heart. He returned to the grand hall, where the night had deepened, torchlight flickering against towering pillars, casting elongated shadows that danced like specters. Layla waited, guarded but unyielding, her spirit a blazing fire, defying the encroaching darkness. "Tell me, Layla," Majid's voice cut through the heavy air, low and hard. "How do you answer the accusation that your bloodline is tainted, that you serve forces bent on my destruction?" Her gaze did not waver. Instead, a gentle sadness softened the sharp edges of her defiance. "My blood is the desert's blood, scarred, tested, but fiercely loyal. I owe no allegiance but to truth and to the realm I was born to protect." A silence thickened between them, charged with unspoken regrets and the fragile hope of reconciliation. The court watched, entranced by the battle not of swords, but of wills. Two souls caught in the relentless grip of legacy and choice. Then, a subtle shift. Layla reached into the folds of her gown and withdrew a small, ornate box, sealed with a wax emblem matching the parties and secrets that now held the court captive. With steady hands, she opened it. Inside lay a locket, ancient, tarnished, yet unmistakably regal. Majid's breath faltered. The pendant bore the same intricate calligraphy as the talisman he had seen moments before, a symbol of unity, binding lineage and truth with an unbreakable thread. "This," she said softly, "was entrusted to me by those who once protected the true heir, my mother's legacy, hidden so it could survive beneath the storms of betrayal." Majid's eyes brimmed with a mixture of awe and sorrow. The locket gleamed faintly, casting a pale light that seemed to pulse with the heartbeat of a past long buried. He stepped closer, the gulf between king and challenger narrowing in this moment of fragile truce. "If this is true, then our fates are bound more deeply than either of us feared. But trust, Layla, must be earned in the crucible of fire, not granted lightly." Her hand trembled, not from fear, but from the weight of endless battles fought in silence. "Then let that fire burn." The hall seemed to hold its breath as the first tendrils of dawn painted the horizon in shades of rose and gold. Outside, the desert stirred, the vast sands whispering secrets only the wind could carry. Majid reached into his robe and withdrew the ring of desert diamonds. He held it out, not as a token of submission, but as a promise forged in the fires of truth and trials to come. "For the sake of our emirate," he murmured, "and the legacy that neither of us can deny." Layla's lips curved in a wary smile. Their eyes locked, a blaze of uncertainty, challenge, and something dangerously close to fragile hope. But before the fragile accord could take root, a shadow detached itself from the far edge of the hall. A whispered voice, cold and venomous, slid through the silence. "Beware the serpent hiding in velvet, Sheikh. Loyalties are not what they seem, and the past has claws sharper than any desert thorn." Majid's gaze snapped toward the source, heart pounding with the knowledge that the true battle had only just begun. The war not between bloodlines, but between trust and betrayal, love and destruction. And in that charged moment, beneath the watchful eyes of stars and silent marble, the billionaire sheikh knew one thing with deadly certainty. The storm was far from over. Majid's clenched fist trembled as he stared at the folded letter, its sinister seal casting a shadow darker than the night cloaking the palace. The whispers that once fluttered like restless desert winds had turned into a suffocating silence. Each breath he drew was a brittle veil over the maelstrom inside him. Rage, disbelief, and an unbearable pang of betrayal threading through his veins like poison. Layla stood across from him, the sapphire glow from the lanterns weaving through the emerald folds of her gown, casting a surreal aura of defiance around her. Her eyes, aflame with a fierce determination, met his without a flicker of doubt. The weight of accusations, hanging between, then throbbed like a pulse, sharp and unyielding. "I never wanted this battle, Sheikh." Her voice broke the silence, calm but steel-edged. "But if war is what it takes to unveil the truth, then so be it." Majid's gaze swept over her, unraveling layers of certainty he thought unbreakable. The cold mask he wore for years cracked, revealing a tempest of vulnerability hidden beneath his command. He turned abruptly, his heavy footsteps echoing down the marble halls, each step a hammer striking the fragile silence. Outside, the desert whispered secrets, known only to the shifting sands, secrets now pressing relentlessly against the walls of his empire. His fingers closed tightly around the ring of desert diamonds, a symbol of power, loyalty, and unspoken promises. Yet the cold metal could not steady the storm raging within. Behind the ornate doors of his private chambers, scrolls and relics lay waiting, silent witnesses of a past buried in shadows. Majid traced the faded calligraphy etched by ancestors whose secrets now threatened to consume him. A sudden knock cut through the heavy air. A trusted aide entered, eyes sharp, bearing a sealed envelope, darker than the night itself. The emblem matched the treacherous crescent and dagger, now smeared with fresh, blood-red wax. With a careful breath, Majid broke the seal, his heart plunging as he read, "The daughter you seek is no true heir. Her allegiance belongs with those cloaked in desert treachery. Trust no storm, but the silence it leaves behind." The chamber grew colder, shadows lengthening as doubt crept into his soul. Returning to the grand hall, Majid found Layla standing alone. Her silhouette, framed by flickering torchlight, unbowed and radiant. "How do you answer the poison whispered against your name?" he demanded, voice low, but electrified with accusation. Without hesitation, Layla's gaze held his, unwavering and luminous. My blood is the desert's pulse, scarred and tested, but fiercely loyal to truth and to the house I was born to protect. A heavy pause lingered, breath caught between them. The court's gazes darted like hawks, witnessing a war waged not with swords, but with every heartbeat charged by legacy and desire. Then, slow and deliberate, Layla withdrew a small, ornate box from the depths of her gown. The emblem on the wax resembled the riddles tormenting the house, a seal of shadows and old loyalties. She opened it with unshaken hands. Inside lay a tarnished, ancient locket, carved with the same intricate calligraphy that adorned the talisman Maid had examined. The soft gleam it cast was like a fragile thread pulling together fractured truths. This was entrusted to me by those who once guarded the true heir, a legacy veiled beneath betrayal's storms, she said softly, voice laced with history's weight. Majid's breath hitched as his gaze sank to the locket. A rush of sorrow and reverence flooded his chest. The divide between them narrowed, a fragile truce forming on the edges of destruction and desire. "If this is true," he murmured, voice almost breaking, "then our destinies are entwined deeper than I ever dared imagine. But trust is a fire that must be earned, not gifted." Her fingers trembled, not with fear, but from battles fought in shadows. "Then let that fire consume us both." Outside, the first hints of dawn bled pale gold across the horizon. The desert, vast and eternal, whispered of change and reckoning, carrying secrets riding the wind. Majid extracted the ring of desert diamonds, holding it carefully in his palm, not as a surrender, but as a pledge forged in storm and unyielding truth. "For the Emirate's future," he said quietly, "for the legacy we cannot deny." Layla's lips curved into a faint, war-weary smile. Eyes locked, their gaze spoke of sharp uncertainties and a fragile hope hatching beneath desolation. Suddenly, a shadow detached from the far edge of the hall, coalescing into a slender figure cloaked in silk and malice. A voice hissed like a desert viper striking unseen. "Beware the serpent hidden in velvet, Sheikh. Loyalties are illusions, and the past claws deeper than any thorn." Majid's eyes snapped toward the threat, his heart pounding harder than the desert drums. The storm that had stirred within was only the beginning. Beneath the shimmering stars and cold marble silence, the truth waited, jagged, unyielding, and alive. The billionaire sheikh understood at last. The greatest battle was not for the throne, but for the fragile trust that could burn them both alive. Majid stood alone in the shadowed hallway, the weight of the letter in his hand, pressing like a stone against his chest. The crescent moon, entwined with a dagger, an emblem soaked in bitter secrets, danced mockingly under the flickering torchlight. His breath came uneven, a raw edge cracking the surface of his controlled composure. Every step he took echoed harshly against the marble, reverberating the chaos building inside him. Behind the massive doors, Layla remained in the grand hall, poised and unreadable. The gathering had dispersed, but the air clung heavy with unfinished questions and fractured loyalties. The scent of oud and crushed rose petals lingered, mingling with the distant howl of the desert wind, as if nature itself mourned the empire's unraveling threads. Majid's mind tore between fury and desperation. The letter's words, "Her true allegiance hides in the sands of treachery," etched a poisonous doubt, but his gaze could not waver from the fierce woman waiting beyond the doors. A daughter of secrets, yes, but a challenger, unlike any he had faced before. His hand trembled as it released the damning parchment. The cool night air kissed his skin through the open archway, whispering promises and threats alike. The diamonds on the ring in his palm shimmered faintly, a cold reminder of vows made and debts unpaid. A sudden presence pulled him back from the edge of his torment. An aide approached silently, bearing a sealed scroll tied with crimson ribbon. The royal emblem burned onto the wax. The message felt heavier even than the last, a summons to the private council, where the empire's most guarded truths would bleed into the open. Maid folded the parchment with care and retreated toward the inner sanctum. Every step he took seemed to push him farther from the iron certainty he once commanded, and deeper into an abyss of unknowns. Inside the chamber, the circle of the eldest advisors awaited, their faces ghost-like in the dim candlelight. Eyes sharpened with fear and ambition flickered as Maid entered, carrying the weight of the kingdoms unraveling in his gaze. The council's leader, an aged man with a voice like rustling silk, spoke solemnly. "The documents you possess, Sheikh, question the very foundation of our lineage. Layla's bloodline is both a key and a curse. To embrace her claim is to open the gates to long-forgotten enemies, and to deny it is to turn against a daughter bred in shadow." Maid's fists clenched. Is there proof beyond words, beyond claim and counterclaim? From the depths of a scribe's satchel came an ancient ledger, the ink faded and brittle, but irrefutable. Minutes stretched like hours as Maid's eyes devoured the scroll's ornate script. Names, dates, bonds sealed in secrecy, and a bloodline sworn to secrecy for survival. Layla had been hidden, protected, and feared, not because of weakness, but because her existence threatened the balance of power that had held the emirate together for decades. His breath hitched at the weight of realization. Footsteps echoed sharply in the outer hallway. A messenger, breath ragged, delivered fresh news, urgency written across his sweat-damp face. Maid broke the seal of the new letter with deliberate slowness. The words inside scorched his soul. An alliance moves unseen, forged in deception. Those loyal to the crown hide blades beneath smiles. Trust fractures as shadows lengthen. A silence fell heavier than the desert night. Every courtesan, every noble in the palace halls was a piece in a game that might be lost before the first move was made. Maid's gaze snapped toward the doors where Layla waited, a silent phoenix reborn from ashes of obscurity. The fierce fire in her eyes met his own, dark and storm-worn. He stepped outside, his voice low but commanding, trembling with a burden not easily shed. "What do you say to the claim that your blood feeds a treacherous cause, that your loyalties aren't to this emirate, but to its enemies?" Her lips parted in a soft, unwavering reply that cut through the thick tension like a desert gale. "I carry the blood of this land, strengthened by exile and refined by truth. I owe loyalty not to shadows or schemes, but to the people who breathe the desert's breath. I seek not to betray, but to reclaim. For a heartbeat, the world held still, caught between past betrayals and the fragile promise of something new. Majid's fingers brushed the ring at his side, a silent vow tethered to a future uncertain. The flickering torchlight traced the lines of their faces, revealing cracks beneath crowns and masks. He stepped closer, the roar of his heart mixing with the quiet thrum of an ancient pulse between them, one that neither power nor secrets could sever. Then, the sharp clatter of footsteps shattered the fragile calm. A figure slipped from shadow, eyes glinting with unspoken malice. A voice, cold and venomous, hissed through the charged air. Beware the vipers clothed in silk, Sheikh. Trust is a luxury you can no longer afford. The past's claws reach deeper than you know. Majid's gaze locked onto the shadowed face, the weight of impending war settling like desert dusk. He turned back to Layla, voice low, carrying the fierce conviction of a man on the brink. Our paths are now bound, and the sands beneath us shift with every secret. We either face the storm together, or be buried beneath it. Her answer came in a whisper barely heard over the rising desert wind. Then let the storm come. The palace doors closed behind them with a sonorous finality, sealing fate and fire within. Outside, under the indifferent gaze of stars, the empire held its breath, and the billionaire sheikh felt the cold certainty that the war for the empire's soul was only just beginning. The moon hung heavy over the emirate, casting pale silver across the palace's polished marble floors, a stark contrast to the tumult raging within. Majid al-Zahari sat alone in the chambers where shadows seemed to collect and whisper secrets long buried. The letters, the talisman, the locket, all pieces of a puzzle he never wished to solve, lay sprawled before him, each an echo of a lineage fractured and concealed. His fingers trembled as they traced the delicate inscriptions on the talisman once more. The weight of his crown pressed down harder than ever, not because of power, but because of doubt. That faint, persistent voice of betrayal gnawed at his resolve. Was Layla truly the daughter of a hidden heir, or a thread pulled loose from a darker tapestry, woven to unravel him? The heavy doors creaked open, and she entered, her emerald gown shimmering softly like the desert oasis after a restless storm. Her eyes, fierce yet weary, met his without flinching. The air between them was thick, charged with the electric pull of shared secrets and unspoken challenges. "You wrestle with ghosts, Sheikh," Layla said quietly, stepping closer, her voice steady, despite the layers of fear and defiance beneath. "But you must know, my claim is no mirage to be dismissed or destroyed. It is the truth your ancestors buried to protect this realm." Majid's jaw tightened. His gaze searched her face, looking not for lies, but for the strength behind them. For years he had ruled with unchallenged authority, a sentinel of a legacy he believed invincible. Now, that very legacy trembled, fragile as shifting sands under evening winds. "I am not blind to the dangers your bloodline stirs," he admitted, voice low and laden with something unfamiliar, vulnerability. "Every loyalty in this court is a blade twisted by ambition. If your truth is real, it threatens to topple all we have built. Layla's breath caught. For a moment, the woman who once walked these halls as a servant now seemed a queen, unafraid to face the storm. "Then let it topple the lies that suffocate us," she whispered, strength rising in her tone. "Better a crown forged in turmoil than one built on deception." The flickering candlelight cast undulating shadows on the walls, mimicking the maze of rising tension between them. A servant's distant footfall echoed faintly, mixing with the desert's whisper beyond the thick drapes. The palace, a gleaming jewel by day, became a crucible of treacheries and fragile hopes by night. Maid rose slowly, the weight of his ornate robe cascading like liquid midnight. He moved to the window, his eyes tracing the vast, star-dusted expanse outside. The kingdom he vowed to protect, even as its foundations quaked beneath secrets. "Your arrival has shaken the sands beneath my feet, Layla," he continued, voice strained yet resolute. "But it has also stirred something I buried deep, a spark of hope that perhaps the future need not be shackled by the past." She stepped to his side, close enough that he caught the subtle scent of jasmine and musk that had become her signature. Hope, or the beginning of greater storms? Her question hung between them like an unspoken promise and a warning. Before he could answer, a sudden soft knock interrupted the agonizing silence. The doors parted, and an elder advisor entered, carrying a sealed envelope marked by the emblem of the secret society that had cast its shadow over the dynasty. Maid's eyes darkened as he broke the seal. The letter's contents hit him like a scorching desert wind. Reports of a hidden alliance forming in the Emirates' underbelly. A cabal seeking to exploit the chaos Layla's claims had unleashed. "They move in shadows," Maid muttered, his voice now a growl beneath the weight of his rising fury. Enemies disguised as friends, waiting for blood to spill. Layla's hand found his, an unanticipated gesture that trembled with fragile trust. "Then we must stand together, Sheikh, not as adversaries, but as defenders of what this land truly deserves." His gaze fell to her hand, then slowly closed around it. A binding touch that carried the pain of 1,000 battles and the fragile hope of an uncertain alliance. For the first time, the invincible billionaire Sheikh felt the daunting vulnerability of a man whose heart and empire teetered on the edge of either salvation or ruin. Outside, the desert wind howled through the palace halls, as if mirroring the fury rising within. The night stretched endlessly, heavy with the promise of reckoning, not just of bloodlines, but of hearts and loyalty. Maid's voice barely rose above the whisper of a dying ember. "We are bound by more than blood and secrets now, Layla." The moment the truth breathed into the light, the emirate itself became a battleground of trust and betrayal. Her eyes reflected the faint glow of the torches lining the hall. "Then let every shadow know fear, for the storm we bring is relentless." Just as that fragile accord seemed to settle, the hall's grand double doors slammed open with a sudden force. A figure stepped into the light, cloaked, silent, but with eyes glinting sharper than desert daggers. The crowd hushed. In a voice cold and edged with menace, the newcomer hissed, "Beware the queen who wears the servant's veil. Not all truths seek to heal. some are weapons forged to destroy. The weight of those words crashed over Majid like a wave. His grip tightened on Layla's hand, the thin line between alliance and ruin fracturing anew. And beneath the dizzying glitter of palace chandeliers, as the desert moon flared high, the billionaire sheikh understood with brutal clarity the real war for his soul, between love and treachery. Power and redemption had only just begun. The first light of dawn seeped gently through the towering windows of the grand hall, bathing the marble floor in soft, golden hues. The emirate was waking, but inside the palace, a hushed stillness reigned, a fragile peace forged from storms finally weathered. Majid al-Zahari stood at the vast balcony, his figure outlined against the awakening desert sky. The ring of desert diamonds gleamed softly in his hand, now free from the burden of anger and doubt. His eyes no longer burned with fury, but held a quiet resolve, tempered by courage earned through the trials of truth and trust. Behind him, Layla emerged from the shadows, her emerald gown shimmering faintly in the morning light. The weight she had carried, the hidden lineage, the whispered accusations, the threats veiled as warnings, had settled into the strength of her shoulders. No longer a servant cloaked in silence, she was the rightful queen of her own destiny and of the emirate's future. Their eyes met, unguarded and steady. In her gaze, Majid saw not only defiance, but the fierce loyalty that had survived betrayal, exile, and doubt. And in his, Layla found the man who had wrestled with pride to embrace truth, a man willing to dismantle old walls for the sake of a new beginning. The court gathered in the hall below, faces no longer masks of suspicion, but softened by hope. The elders spoke in measured tones about the ancient scrolls and talismans once buried in secrecy, now honored as pillars of the emirate's legacy. The documents confirming Layla's lineage had shifted whispers into proclamations of rightful succession. The fear of rebellion transformed into collective determination to rebuild a kingdom born of honesty and unity. Majid stepped forward, his voice steady, yet filled with the warmth that only surrendering control can bring. For too long, shadows have bound us, shadows of lies and silence, of fears unspoken. Today we choose light, we choose truth, and we choose a future where no secret can divide us. Layla's smile blossomed, radiant and sincere. This emirate belongs to all its children, those hidden and those known, bound by the blood of its land and the strength of its people. Together, we will forge a reign of justice and compassion. The murmurs of approval grew, and one by one, courtiers stepped forward in allegiance. Old grievances softened like the desert night yielding to dawn. The palace, once a stage for titanic secrets, now echoed with cautious celebration. Majid turned to Layla, offering his hand, not as a gesture of conquest, but of partnership. She took it with steady grace, their fingers intertwining, a silent vow sealing the path they would walk together. Days passed, and the palace bloomed anew. Gardens long forgotten were revived, fragrant with desert roses and jasmine, symbols of the resilience and delicate beauty that now defined their reign. Courtyard fountains sang softly under the sun, mirroring the renewal that rippled through the hearts of all who dwelled within these walls. In quiet moments, Maid and Layla stood side by side, the weight of crowns balanced between them. The storms they had faced lingered as distant thunder, reminders of a past now behind. They spoke in whispers, laughter threading through shared memories and dreams still untold. Majid's fingers brushed a strand of hair from Layla's face, their eyes sealing promises deeper than words. You have taught me that true power lies not in dominion, but in trust. With you, I am more than a ruler. I am a man reborn. Layla's gaze softened, the fires of struggle replaced by the warmth of home. And you have shown me that even in a world built on secrets, love can be the fiercest truth. Together they watch the sun rise higher, gilding the horizons beyond the palace walls. The emirate stretched vast and eternal, a land of endless sands and timeless skies, now untouched by shadows of the past and bright with the hopes of tomorrow. Majid lifted Layla's hand to his lips, a ring of desert diamonds catching the light, a symbol no longer of binding chains, but of unbreakable bonds. Around them, the world seemed to hold its breath, cradling a moment where love and legacy entwined, unstoppable and pure. And in that dawn, beneath the endless expanse of sky, their story found its peace, a promise carved into the heart of the desert, enduring and infinite.